Adrian Hayes sat in the corner booth of Riverside Café, watching rain streak down the windows. At 37, he was the CEO of Hayes Financial Group, a man whose name appeared in business magazines and whose decisions moved millions of dollars. He wore a dark tailored suit, sipped black coffee, and stared at nothing in particular. It was his birthday. His 37th birthday, and he was spending it alone in a cafe on a Tuesday afternoon because he had nowhere else to be. No one to celebrate with. No one who'd even remembered to text. His phone sat on the table, silent. His assistant had sent a generic happy birthday email that morning, probably programmed into her calendar. His brother had called last week, a week early, because he'd be traveling. His parents were gone, lost in a car accident 5 years ago. The friends he'd once had were distant now, relationships that had faded under the weight of his work schedule and his inability to let people in. Adrian had built an empire. He had money, power, respect, and he was utterly, completely alone. He took another sip of coffee, bitter and cooling, watching families and couples around the cafe. A mother feeding a baby, 2 women laughing over tea, an elderly man reading a newspaper. All of them connected to someone, part of something. All of them belonging. "Are you okay, sir?" Adrian looked down. A little girl stood beside his table, maybe 4 or 5 years old, with blonde hair pulled up in a messy bun adorned with a pink bow. She wore a coral-colored dress over a white long-sleeved shirt, and she was holding a chocolate chip cookie that looked half-eaten. "I'm fine." "Thank you," Adrian said, trying to smile politely, expecting her to run back to her mother. But she didn't move. Instead, she tilted her head, studying him with the brutal honesty that only children possess. "You look sad. My mommy says when people look sad, we should be kind to them." Adrian felt something crack in his chest. This tiny child, this stranger, had seen something in him that no one else had noticed in years. Or maybe they'd noticed and just didn't care. "I'm okay," he said again, his voice softer. "Just thinking." "About what?" "Grown-up things. Nothing important." The girl nodded solemnly, then held out her cookie. "You can have some. Cookies make everything better. That's what my grandma says." Adrian stared at the offering. The cookie was small, slightly crumbled, clearly precious to this child. And she was offering it to a stranger because she thought he looked sad. "That's very kind," Adrian managed, his throat tight. "But that's your cookie. You should keep it. I have more at home. And you need it more than me. You look really, really sad." Before Adrian could respond, a woman appeared, hurrying over. She was young, maybe late 20s, with light brown hair and concerned eyes. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, clearly the girl's mother. "Harper." "I'm so sorry, sir. She wandered off while I was ordering." The mother's face was flushed with embarrassment as she reached for her daughter's hand. "It's all right," Adrian said. "She was just being kind." "She does that," the mother said, torn between pride and exasperation. "She thinks everyone needs help or cookies or both." "Harper, come on, let the man have his coffee in peace." "But, Mommy, he's sad. Look at his face." The mother's eyes met Adrian's, and he saw recognition there, not of who he was, but of what he was feeling. Loneliness recognized loneliness. "Harper's right," the mother said quietly. "You do look like you could use some company. Would you mind if we sat with you? Just for a little while? We're waiting for our order and all the other tables are taken." Adrian looked around the cafe. There were actually several empty tables, but he understood what she was really offering. Not to intrude on his space, but to share it. To sit with someone who looked like they needed not to be alone. "I'd like that," he said, and meant it. The mother and Harper slid into the booth across from him. Harper immediately broke her cookie in half and pushed a piece across the table. "I'm Harper Rose Thompson," she announced formally. "I'm 4 3/4. This is my mommy, Charlotte." "What's your name?" "Adrian." "Adrian Hayes. I'm 37. "That's old," Harper said matter-of-factly, "but not super old like my grandpa." "Do you have kids?" "Harper," Charlotte warned gently. "No," Adrian said. "No kids. No family, really." "That's sad," Harper said with devastating simplicity. "Everyone needs family. We can share ours if you want." "We have lots." Charlotte looked mortified. "Harper, you can't just adopt random people in cafes." "Why not?" "You said we should be kind." And he needs family. Look at him. Adrian found himself laughing, really laughing, for the first time in weeks. She's right. I do look pretty pathetic, don't I? You look lonely, Charlotte corrected gently. There's a difference. Lonely people aren't pathetic. They're just alone. Something about the way she said it, with understanding rather than pity, made Adrian look at her more closely. She had kind eyes, but tired ones. The kind of tired that came from carrying weight alone. Are you speaking from experience? He asked. Charlotte hesitated, then nodded. Harper's father left when she was 6 months old. It's been just us for 4 years. I know what lonely looks like. Their order arrived, and Charlotte insisted Adrian join them for lunch. They shared sandwiches and cookies while Harper talked non-stop about her preschool, her friend Maya, who could do a cartwheel, and her stuffed rabbit Mr. Whiskers, who was scared of thunderstorms. Adrian found himself relaxing, smiling, engaging in a way he hadn't in years. Harper asked him questions with no filter, wanting to know what his favorite color was if he liked dinosaurs, whether he thought unicorns were real. Harper believes everything magical is real until proven otherwise, Charlotte explained, smiling at her daughter. I don't have the heart to tell her different. Maybe she's right, Adrian said. Maybe we stop believing in magic because we stop looking for it. Charlotte studied him. That's surprisingly philosophical for a man drinking black coffee alone in a cafe. It's my birthday, Adrian admitted, surprising himself. He hadn't planned to tell anyone. Guess I'm feeling introspective. Harper's eyes went wide. It's your birthday? Did you have a party? Did you get presents? Did you eat cake? No to all three. Harper looked scandalized. She turned to her mother. Mommy, we have to fix this. It's his birthday. You can't have a birthday without cake. Harper, I'm sure Mr. Hayes has plans. I don't, Adrian interjected. I really don't. And honestly, this has been the best part of my day. Sharing lunch with you both. Charlotte looked at him searchingly, seeing past the expensive suit to the lonely man underneath. Well then, we can't let your birthday pass without cake. There's a bakery 2 blocks from here. Harper and I were heading there anyway. Would you like to join us? Adrian should have said no, should have thanked them politely and gone back to his empty penthouse apartment. But Harper was looking at him with such hope, and Charlotte with such understanding, and he was so tired of being alone. I'd love to. The 3 of them walked to the bakery, Harper holding both their hands, chattering about what kind of cake Adrian should get. Charlotte walked beside him and they talked about real things. Not business or status or achievements, but life. She told him about her job as a kindergarten teacher, about how she loved watching children discover the world. He told her about the pressure of running a company, about how success had cost him everything except money. Do you like what you do? Charlotte asked as Harper pressed her nose against the bakery window. I used to. I built the company from nothing, spent years making it successful. But somewhere along the way, I forgot why I started. Now I just show up because that's what I'm supposed to do. That's sad. Life's too short to spend it doing things that don't make you happy. What makes you happy? Charlotte pointed at Harper, who was now explaining to a patient baker exactly what kind of birthday cake a man named Adrian would like. That, watching her discover joy in everything, teaching kids to read and see them light up when words suddenly make sense. Small things, simple things. I don't have much money, but I have enough love to make up for it. They left the bakery with a small chocolate cake and 4 candles shaped like the number 3 and 7. Back at Charlotte's modest apartment, Harper insisted on singing Happy Birthday 3 times because once wasn't enough for such an important occasion. Adrian sat at their small kitchen table, wearing a paper crown Harper had made, eating chocolate cake with a 4-year-old and her mother, and he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Joy. Simple. Uncomplicated joy. Make a wish, Harper commanded when Adrian leaned over the candles. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, he had something to wish for. Not money or success or power. Connection. Family, this feeling of belonging. He blew out the candles. Over the next few weeks, Adrian found himself stopping by the cafe regularly, hoping to run into Charlotte and Harper. And they were often there, Harper always delighted to see him, Charlotte welcoming with that gentle smile that made him feel seen. He learned that Charlotte was struggling to pay for Harper's medical expenses. Harper had been born with a heart condition that required regular monitoring and would eventually need surgery. Charlotte's teacher salary barely covered rent and basic expenses, let alone the mounting medical bills. Adrian wanted to help, but he understood that Charlotte's pride wouldn't accept charity. So he became strategic. He hired Charlotte's brother for a position at his company, a job the young man was actually qualified for but had been struggling to find. He made a significant donation to Harper's preschool in exchange for them offering Charlotte a better position with better benefits. He never told Charlotte any of this was his doing, but mostly, he just showed up. He attended Harper's preschool play, sitting in the back row and cheering when she played a flower. He brought coffee to Charlotte when she had parent-teacher conferences. He learned how to braid Harper's hair after watching a YouTube tutorial because Charlotte mentioned having trouble doing it herself. 6 months after that rainy day in the cafe, Charlotte confronted him. "I know what you've been doing," she said one evening after Harper had fallen asleep on the couch between them during a movie. "My brother told me about the job." The preschool director mentioned the donation. "Adrian, you can't keep secretly helping us? Why not?" "Because it's too much." "Because we're not your responsibility. Because I don't want you to feel obligated." "I don't feel obligated. I feel grateful." Charlotte stared at him. "Grateful?" Adrian looked at Harper, sleeping peacefully, her small hand clutching his sleeve. "That day in the cafe, I was planning what would be the least messy way to end my life." Charlotte's breath caught. "I had it all figured out," Adrian continued quietly. "I'd made provisions for my company, updated my will, tied up loose ends. I was successful by every measure society values, but I had no reason to keep going. No one who'd miss me, no connection to anyone or anything that mattered. And then this tiny girl walked up to me and offered me half her cookie because I looked sad." His voice broke slightly. "She saw me, Charlotte. In a world where I'd become invisible behind my title and my bank account, a 4-year-old child saw me and thought I deserved kindness. You both saved my life that day. So no, I don't feel obligated. I feel like I found my family." Charlotte's eyes filled with tears. "We're not your charity case, and I'm not yours. We're just 3 lonely people who found each other. Harper said I could share your family. I'm just taking her up on that offer." They started dating officially after that, though Adrian had been in love with Charlotte since she'd let him sit with them in the cafe. He loved her strength, her grace, her ability to find joy despite struggling. He loved how she made him want to be better, not richer or more successful, but kinder and more present. And he loved Harper with a fierceness that surprised him. This tiny girl who'd offered a stranger her cookie had become his whole world. When Adrian proposed a year later, he did it at the cafe where they'd met, with Harper's enthusiastic participation. Harper wore her pink bow and held the ring box, barely able to contain her excitement. "Mommy, say yes." "We need him! He's part of our family!" Charlotte said yes through happy tears, not because Adrian was wealthy or could provide security, but because he'd shown up every day for a year, proving that love was about presence, not presents. At their wedding, Harper was the flower girl. And in her toast at the reception, she told everyone about the sad man in the cafe who needed a cookie. "My mommy says sometimes angels come in unexpected packages," Harper said solemnly to the audience. "I think Mr. Adrian was our angel. But Mommy says we were his angels too, so maybe we all just saved each other." Years later, when Harper needed her heart surgery, Adrian was there, holding Charlotte's hand through the terrifying hours of waiting. When Harper woke up, groggy and confused, she saw both of them there and smiled. "Did I tell you?" she whispered. "Cookies make everything better." Adrian had built a financial empire before he was 40, but his real success came from a rainy Tuesday afternoon when he'd been at his lowest point, and a little girl in a pink bow had looked at him and asked, "Are you okay, sir?" She'd offered him a cookie. He'd found a family, and somewhere in that exchange, they'd all saved each other. Because sometimes the most important business deals happen not in boardrooms, but in cafes. Sometimes the most valuable assets aren't measured in dollars, but in shared cookies and answered questions, and someone caring enough to notice you're not. "Okay, Sometimes the loneliest CEO just needs a 4-year-old to remind him that everyone deserves kindness. And sometimes that simple act of noticing changes everything. If this story reminded you that connection matters more than success, please like, share, and subscribe. Comment below about a time someone showed you kindness when you needed it most. We're all one moment away from being that person in the cafe, and one moment away from being the person who stops to ask if someone's okay. Both roles matter. Both can save lives.